Today we'll answer the question, can my spouse who does not work get a life insurance policy? The answer is yes, but there are some rules that you want to be aware of. Today we'll cover those rules. What we'll start with though are the rules around a working spouse, because this will all tie in to the non-working spouse. So let's pretend that Bob is the breadwinner in the family. He's earning the income. We'll pretend he's 40 years old. And he asks, what is the maximum death benefit that I can be approved for? What is used to determine how much life insurance he can be approved for is his income. At age 40, most insurance companies will use a 30 times multiple of income to determine the maximum amount of life insurance he can get. So if his income is $100,000, they'll multiply his income times 30, which is $3 million. And that's the maximum death benefit he can get. Now, this is the maximum death benefit he can get across all life insurance companies, meaning he can't get a $3 million death benefit with one company and then another $3 million with another company. It's $3 million across all companies. Now, that $3 million does not include any coverage that he might have through his employer. So if he works for a large corporation and the corporation says you have a $1 million term group life insurance policy, that's considered a group policy, which means if he leaves, he might not have that policy anymore. So when he applies for an individual policy and this maximum death benefit of $3 million is what he's approved for, that's individual coverage. What he is paying for out of pocket, it excludes what you're getting through your employer. Now what you'll notice is as we get older, the multiple goes down. So if he's 50 years old, he might qualify for a maximum of 20 times his annual income. So if his income is still $100,000 per year, 100,000 times 20 is $2 million. That would be the maximum death benefit that Bob can be approved for if he's applying for an individual life insurance policy. Now those income multiples could be a little bit higher. It depends on the company. These are just averages that I'm using here. Let's progress on now to the non-working spouse. So the non-working spouse, we'll call her Jill. Generally, a non-working spouse can be approved for 50% of what the working spouse has in coverage. So for example, if Bob has $3 million in life insurance, doesn't matter how old he is, but if he's got a total of $3 million in individual coverage, so again, excluding what he has through work, Jill can be approved for a maximum death benefit of 50% of that dollar figure. So 50% of $3 million is $1.5 million. That would be the default answer of how much life insurance Jill, the non-working spouse, can get in coverage. There are some exceptions to this. Here's the big one. What if Bob is sick or uninsurable? Maybe he had cancer within the past couple years and he can't get life insurance right now. That's an exception here. In cases like this, what we've done with a lot of clients we've worked with is we've been able to get them 100% of what the working spouse would be able to get if they could get a policy for themselves. So what that means is if Bob was 40 years old and he makes $100,000 per year and would qualify for a total of $3 million, but he's not insurable because he was sick a couple of years ago and he can't get life insurance, well, in this particular case, we would probably be able to get a $3 million death benefit for Jill, the non-working spouse. It's not guaranteed, but it is possible. And we've been able to do this on a number of occasions. We just need to explain this to the insurance company up front and provide them the specific reason why we're getting a policy that is typically larger than what they would accept on a non-working spouse. And when you provide the specific details around why the working spouse can't get coverage, that creates a situation where often an underwriter looks at it and says, okay, that makes sense. Yes, you can do that because you're trying to protect the family here. So a non-working spouse can generally get 50% of whatever the working spouse has in life insurance coverage, An exception to that is if the working spouse is sick or uninsurable, then we can typically get more than 50%. There's another thing to look at. A lot of people aren't aware of this one. Our net worth. Instead of using our annual income to determine how much life insurance a non-working or working spouse, for that matter, can get, instead we can use our assets or our net worth. This is generally used in estate planning cases, but it does not always need to be estate planning cases. So the formula that is used for this is as follows. We'll take someone's current net worth. There is a 6% appreciation rate applied to that net worth, and that's calculated for 20 years, and it compounds actually. I'll show you a cool calculator in a minute. But then after 20 years, we cut that number in half, and that's the total death benefit that we can be approved for. And because it is an estate planning case, this is how insurance companies often view it, doesn't matter if we have income being generated by a spouse or not, because we're basing the need for insurance off of the total net worth they have instead. Where this comes into play, if I'm getting a whole life insurance policy for cash value, is that the death benefit has a direct relationship to the MEC limit. So in many cases where we work with someone who is getting a big policy and they want to stuff a ton of cash in, we're trying to push that death benefit up to open up that room so they can put money in and not trigger a MEC, meaning they can access the cash value tax-free. Let's take a look at the calculator here. So right now, we've got a net worth of 0. We had a $3 million example. So your 6% appreciation rate for 20 years. This is a formula that you will see some insurance companies use. So let's pretend that Bob and Jill have a net worth of $3 million, just like we mentioned. So what we've got is the 6% appreciation rate. This is going to compound every year. So 6% of $3 million is $180,000. So that's why it's 3.18. And then the next year, it's 6% of 3.18, which is why it compounds to $3.37 million. So it continues to compound. After 20 years, that number would have compounded to more than $9.6 million. Is that how much life insurance you can be approved for, whether you're the working spouse or non-working spouse? No, I wish. What insurance companies do is cut that number in half, so we take 50% of it, and then here is the maximum death benefit that we can be approved for. See that figure? $4.8 million in this case. Now, what we want to note here is down below, we have existing policies. So let's start here. Maximum death benefit, $4.8 million. If Jill, the non-working spouse, has nothing in coverage, or Bob for that matter, we'd be able to get a maximum of about $4.8 million in coverage. We've done this for a lot of clients we've worked with. Now, if they said, hey, we already have some life insurance in force. Let's say they bought a $1 million 20-year term policy 5 years ago. Well, that will reduce the total amount that you can be approved for. The same would be the case if you could get a maximum of $3 million based on your income. If you already have $1 million, you have to deduct that as far as the maximum death benefit you can get with a new policy. So if they already have $1 million, we punch that in, there we go. And then the maximum death benefit is $3.8 million. Regardless, this is a great tool to be aware of, because if you take the example we just looked at, we had Bob and Jill. We'll wrap up with this. Bob earned an income of $100,000 per year, which if we use the income multiplier at 30x, that gives him a total death benefit of $3 million that he could get for a personal policy. And then Jill, if we look at her, let's put her in blue. If she does not work, we know that she can get 50% of what Bob has which is $1.5 million. So that's if we take the income approach, which is what most people do because it's the most common approach used in the life insurance industry. Now the thing is, if Bob and Jill have a net worth of $3 million, that really opens up the window now. Real estate counts as well. We have to factor in the liabilities, so we can't just use our assets only. But if we've got a net worth of $3 million, instead of using the income multiplier, we know we can get a maximum death benefit of about $4.8 million, which is pretty cool. Now, it's either or. It's not both. I can't get $3 million based on income and another $4.8 based on my net worth. That would be nice, but it's not possible, unfortunately. It's either or. Now, the last thing here is if they have a net worth, let's say, of $1 million, that does change things quite a bit. Where, here we go, 1 million. Let's assume they've got nothing in coverage. The most they can get is 1.6 million if they've got a $1 million net worth, which means I wouldn't want to take this approach using my net worth to try and qualify for a death benefit for my non-working spouse or anyone. Instead, I would want to use the income. I can get more that way, especially for the working spouse. In this case, actually, Jill would be able to get 1.6, so she'd get $100,000 more than the 1.5 we would otherwise get based on Bob's income. Hope that made sense. Fun stuff regardless. Anyway, in summary, can my spouse that doesn't work get a life insurance policy? The answer is yes, but we want to be aware of the rules. If I am getting a life insurance policy for my non-working spouse, the insurance company is first going to ask, how much do you, the working spouse, have in coverage? Typically, we, the insurance company, will allow a maximum of 50% of whatever you have in life insurance. Now, there are exceptions to that. You can go higher if the working spouse is sick or uninsurable. If there are other things to be aware of, perhaps the non-working spouse does generate some income or she's due an inheritance, he or she is due an inheritance later. Sometimes you can push up that limit. Some companies will actually allow a non-working spouse to have as much as 100% of whatever the working spouse has, even if they're healthy. And they'll do the same with children sometimes. So all companies have slightly different rules. We just want to be aware of those rules. Now, if the income isn't doing it for us, but we have a decent net worth, that's where we can use that to our advantage to get more coverage if we want more coverage, whether we just want more life insurance or if we're trying to get a big death benefit to raise the MEC limit, so now we can pump more cash into the policy. So I do hope that you enjoyed this video. I would love to hear your thoughts, and if you like these types of videos, please let me know in the comments below, or you can DM me. LinkedIn is my preferred platform of choice for direct messages, and as always, I hope this helps. Thanks so much.